Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Giraldo Show. I am your host, Sebastian Giraldo. Today's episode is going to be talking a little bit about the Grammys that did happen yesterday and some of the stories, but I found another story about the coronavirus, a breaking news story that kind of just came out very recently as I'm recording this on Monday the 27th at 11:25 is when I am recording this episode. I'm staying up a little bit later to record for you guys, but I love doing it, so I'm going to do it. I was going to talk a little bit about the Grammys, and I'll talk a little bit about it right now. Kind of just wanted to talk about what happened. I mean, for those who didn't watch it, I didn't watch it either, but I mean, in summary, Billie Eilish won basically all of the awards, all of the major awards. If you don't know who that is, look her up. She's a new artist, really young artist. The Grammys had the worst viewership that they've ever had, at least very recently. According to Fox News, they gathered around 18.7 million viewers on Sunday night for CBS, which makes it the ceremony's lowest rated broadcast in its history. Last year's broadcast dropped a whopping the broadcast from 2012, it dropped 53% from that, and it saw a 6% drop from last year's, which had 19.9 million viewers. So I guess people don't really like watching award shows anymore because they know how political it might get. I don't know how political it got necessarily in the Grammys and the speeches. All I know is that one artist in particular, wore a pro-Trump dress, so that was kind of cool. I did see that. I was going to talk about that in today's story, but I thought the coronavirus is a little bit more important, especially with the breaking news that it's being spread more rapidly in China. But before we get into the coronavirus, let's go ahead and talk about Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz. So recently, a John Bolton book came out about impeachment, and Democrats have been going a little bit crazy on trying to use this as testimony by saying this has to be the one thing that can take Trump down. Haven't read the book, obviously, but I've seen on Twitter there's a lot of it's back and forth. I mean, some people, obviously the Democrats, are saying, oh, look, it's definitely condemning Trump, and the Republicans saying, well, it's actually a lot less than that. There's not too much. Well, Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz, who is a self-described liberal Democrat, to be fair, he's on the Trump defense team. He said he voted for Hillary Clinton, so he's pretty unbiased in this sort. He told the U.S. Senate on Monday, so earlier today, that if the allegations in former National Security Advisor John Bolton's book were true, it would not matter because his allegations do not constitute an impeachable offense. Now, I do have a video clip of Dershowitz going through this transcript that I have right here. I was going to read it, but I found the video. It is a bit long, and I do apologize for keeping it long, but if I really took out any part of the video, it's better for me to explain after the video is over and have you hear the entire thing, because if I cut it at a specific point, you might miss some parts, and I prefer to have you listen it from Alan Dershowitz himself, from the Senate person, than from myself reading the transcript. So here's the video. Again, this is going to be a little bit long. It's a little bit over 1 minute 30 seconds, so just bear with the video. It encompasses a lot, so I'll go ahead and make sure to go over it once the video is over. I'll try to give it a quick summary, and then we'll move on to other stories. But here we go. Here's the video, or here's the audio for you guys of Alan Dershowitz defending the President of the United States against the John Bolton book.
The claim that foreign policy decisions can be deemed abuses of power based on subjective opinions about mixed or sole motives, that the President was interested only in helping himself, demonstrate the dangers of employing the vague, subjective, and politically malleable phrase abuse of power as a constitutionally permissible criteria for the removal of a president. Now, it follows from this that if a president, any president, were to have done what the Times reported about the content of the Bolton manuscript, that would not constitute an impeachable offense. Let me repeat. Nothing in the Bolton revelations, even if true, would rise to the level of an abuse of power or an impeachable offense. That is clear from the history. That is clear from the language of the Constitution. You cannot turn conduct that is not impeachable into impeachable conduct simply by using words like quid pro quo and personal benefit. It is inconceivable that the framers would have intended so politically loaded and promiscuously deployed a term as abuse of power to be weaponized as a tool of impeachment. It is precisely the kind of vague, open-ended, and subjective term that the framers feared and rejected.
I was re-listening to the clip, and I just remembered Dershowitz hit for those who are wondering, at the end of the clip, Dershowitz hit the mic with the paper that he was using, and that's why there was that sound at the end. I do apologize for that. And again, the video is a little bit long, but I think it's important for you to hear the entirety of the speech from him himself, and then I'll go over what I am talking about. So basically what Dershowitz is saying is that the subjective claims that are in the book that Bolton is putting out, they're not enough. You can't go on you can't impeach someone off of subjective claims, is basically what he's saying. So basically Dershowitz saying it demonstrates the danger of employing the vague, subjective, and politically malleable phrase abuse of power as a constitutionally permissible criteria for the removal of a president. And yeah, that's very true. It's abuse of power is probably the most generic, the most vague thing that someone could be charged with. Abuse of what power? It's definitely politically malleable because any political party could say abuse of power. I could go out and say Pelosi or Adam Schiff are abusing of their power for all of these impeachment trials as well. And this is what they're doing for the president right now. That's what they've officially charged him on their impeachment with: obstruction of Congress and abuse of power. Again, two very vague descriptions of an impeachment, and this is not what the founding fathers intended. Dershowitz made that very clear, that impeachment was only meant for high crimes, treason, etc. Abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, while it might sound bad, they're so vague that it's abuse of power could be, as I mentioned, I think in a previous episode, it could be, abuse of power could be, oh, he's using his power to get a free meal or something because he doesn't want to pay at a restaurant. That might seem like a bit of an exaggerated example, but you could argue that that's an example of abuse of power when someone uses their position to get something that they want. However, President Trump obviously was interested in the corruption in Ukraine because it's a matter of of Ukrainian interference in the American election. Even if the claims could have been hypothetical, or if they were exaggerated, if they were conspiracy theories, it was still important, I believe, for Donald Trump to investigate, because if it were true, then there is a huge political scandal for the Hillary side, because that was what the conspiracy theory was, with CrowdStrike and Burisma, with conspiracies of the Hillary campaign against the Trump campaign back in the 2016 election. Dershowitz, at the end of his, basically kind of in the middle, he's saying nothing in the Bolton revelations, even if true, would rise to the level of an abuse of power or an impeachable offense. Basically, the claims that are being made in this John Bolton book that are supposedly huge for this impeachment trial would not surmount to an impeachable offense, would not lead to the president being removed. Let's get this straight. Dershowitz is as unbiased of a source that I could give you, because he is a Hillary voter, liberal Democrat, self-proclaimed, probably is not a big fan of Trump. He's from Harvard Law, so he knows what he's talking about. He's on the Trump campaign. He's on the Trump defense team defending the president, because even though he is part of the other political party, he understands how much of a political disservice this is to the country. I mean, wasting tax dollars on this impeachment effort. We just want this to be over with. We know President Trump's not going to be removed, and I'm pretty positive he's going to win again in 2020. So fingers crossed for November when that comes. Dershowitz ending his statements: it's inconceivable that the framers would have intended so politically loaded and promiscuously deployed a term as abuse of power to be weaponized as a tool of impeachment. Basically what I said earlier, that the Founding Fathers did not intend for this abuse of power nonsense to be used as an impeachable offense for the president. It's very clearly stated that it's high crimes, treason, etc., and none of that is occurring with the President of the United States. So I think that's important to understand when it comes to the impeachment stuff. I don't really want to cover too much impeachment because I've covered a lot of it in previous episodes, and I don't really want to cover it a lot because the Senate's gonna acquit Trump. He's not gonna get removed from office unless a lot of Republicans find some overwhelming evidence of some sort of corruption against Trump. So we'll go ahead and see what happens with that. But let's go ahead and move on to the coronavirus. Now, obviously, for those who don't know, there's an outbreak of a virus in China that has led to a lot of quarantining in China, and it looks like it's spreading rapidly in China to the point where it's getting a little bit to the dangerous level. Travels to China and from China are being closed off. Let me go ahead and tell you more about the story. So new reports from the Chinese government indicate that the number of people who have been infected by the coronavirus jumped from 2,700 yesterday to over 4,500 today, as the number of people who have died from the outbreak is now well over 100. The Associated Press reported. China on Tuesday reported 25 more deaths from a new viral disease, raising the total to at least 106, as the U.S. government prepared to fly Americans out of the city at the center of the outbreak. There were 1,771 new cases confirmed on Monday, raising the national total to 4,515, according to the National Health Commission. It is said that 976 were in serious condition. The Washington Post reported that a scientific assessment of the spread of the disease, assuming an optimistic 90% quarantine, still predicted more than 59,000 infections and 1,500 deaths, twice the toll of the 2002 and 2003 SARS outbreak. So this is starting to become a little bit of a concern, especially for China. The United States has seen a little bit of outbreaks, but it's being handled in a way. The United States is healthy enough to where if you continue to go on with habits that keep you healthy every day, washing your hands, making sure you're not in dirty places, covering your mouth when you cough, leaving an area when someone has coughed, that's what I've been taught. You don't want to stay in an area for too long where a lot of people are coughing because it could end to you getting sick. If you keep doing those things, you're most likely will be fine. I don't know if this is happening, but I hope that there isn't a lot of panic being spread by news organizations, because while it is bad in China, it's not as bad here in the United States. It's still in the double digits at this point, which is still too many, but it's in double digits at this point, and as long as you continue to have healthy habits, I think you will be just fine. So the New York Times reported yesterday that the rapid spread of the virus led China's communist government to expanding its quarantine to an unprecedented scope, affecting 56 million people. China has over 1 billion people, so it seems like not that much, but 56 million people, that is a substantial amount. That's basically 1/6 of the imagine if 1/6 of the United States population was quarantined all of a sudden. It's just mind-boggling. The US CDC raised its travel warning to China to its highest level, strongly encouraging Americans to not travel to the communist nation. CDC said in a statement saying CDC recommends that travelers avoid all non-essential travel to China. In response to an outbreak of respiratory illness, Chinese officials have closed transport within and out of Wuhan and other cities in Hubei province, including buses, subways, trains, and the international airport. Additional restrictions and cancellations of events may occur. There's limited access to adequate medical care in affected areas. So now the CDC is putting out that don't travel to China if you don't have to, and I think that's a smart idea. Obviously, China's having this huge outbreak, and hopefully this can get solved pretty quickly. It's always bad when something like this starts to happen. China right now is in the process of building a massive hospital, nearly 270,000 square feet in response to this crisis. It's going to be completed in the next few days, so hopefully they can get that done. Hopefully, again, China can stay healthy. I mean, obviously, you don't like to, even though China is an enemy, in quotes, in air quotes, you still want to pray for the well-being of their people, because it's not good to see people dying from a disease. So keep the people of China in mind, the people that are infected, and hopefully not too many more people will die and or be infected. Hopefully this can go away sometime pretty soon. But that's going to be it for today's episode of the Giraldo Show. Thank you very much for tuning in. We are so close to 1,000, and we're so close to the end of January. I want to get to 1,000 before this month is over. 4 days from now, the month will be over, so I believe we are 17 away from getting 1,000. I mean, we're over 1,000 including YouTube, but I want to get 1,000 not including YouTube, and then I can exaggerate the details a little bit more when I talk to people about my podcast and how big it is. But again, thank you very much. Make sure to share the podcast with anyone who you think might like a young conservative voice out there in the world, spreading the conservative message. So once again, thank you very much, and I'll see you tomorrow. My name is Sebastian Giraldo, and you are listening to The Giraldo Show.